be recorded and uploaded onto the Facebook group for primary school families. We were going to stream it into Facebook, but as we were having some issues with that, so for those who missed the meeting, they will be able to go to Facebook and get a recording. And for those who want to continue the conversation, you can go into the Facebook group as well. And, you know, if there's anything that we need to follow up on, we will be communicating that via Facebook and the newsletter that I hope all of you are receiving. Without further ado, I'm going to ask Mrs. Richards to just say a few words of introduction. And I think I've mentioned all the officers that are here. So, Mrs. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Good evening to all of the parents and families who are online with us. We hope you are doing well. As Mr. Johnson said, we want to check in with you to see how you are doing, more specifically, how your children are doing. But tonight is about also responding to any questions that you have. We'll do our best to respond to them. The ones that are health related, we will record and we will submit them to the Department of Health, and we will post the responses on the Facebook pages. But we want to maximize our time, so we're really going to jump in. Mr. Johnson will start off by addressing the questions that came in. We will also respond to any questions you have live, and then we will share some of the survey results from the survey that parents filled out in terms of how are things going with the reopening of schools. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Mr. Johnson.
Great, thanks. Okay, so there's quite a few questions that have come up. I'm going to start with the one at the very end of this list I have in front of me. It's about Power School. And the person is saying that she has not been able to set up an account with the instructions given. So we have with us Jacqueline Eve, who is the registration coordinator, and she may be able to assist. So is Donna Skraders here?
Yeah.
Is there a Mrs. Skraders? Well, she's not here yet. So given that that's a very specific question, okay. So there have been a couple of apologies. Some people cannot put their cameras on, which is cool, no problem. So I guess we should come back to that question.
We've lost you, Mr. Johnson.
No, we're fine.
Can't hear you.
Still cannot hear you.
Want me to turn it on now? Just talk to Steve.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. I've got some hardware problems. So there's a question about Power School. Is there anybody else having a problem with Power School? Is Mrs. Skraders here? No. All right, we'll come back to that if she does show up, because nobody else has that issue. There's a question about the middle school transition. Children are asking if they're staying at their current primary school or moving on. Registration is in February. When will we know? Mrs. Richards.
I will respond to that question, and I'm sure it's the question on the minds of most of our P6 parents. We are still in discussion. We will do our best to get to you as soon as we can. with advance notice, even if we have to do some adjustments with the, registration period to give parents sufficient time. But discussions are still underway, and we will finalize that information shortly. I do apologize for the delay around that.
But can I just add something
You
in
sure?
regards to middle school registration? If everything goes according to plan, it should not be that hard, Ms. Richards, because depending on your primary school, remember middle school registration is based on the feeder school system right now. So if things do not change, you should kind of already have, P6 parents should kind of already have an idea of to where your children will be placed based on the feeder school system.
Great.
Was the parents
Okay.
online who posted that question? Because there may be some additional thoughts around that.
There were actually a couple of people asking about that. So,
Okay, but that was
I'm getting a lot of I'm getting a lot of calls in regards to that, because middle school registration is being held, well, scheduled to be held in January, and so parents are just concerned. A lot of them are worrying whether or not there's going to be a P7,
right.
right? So is my child staying at that school? Is it the same uniform? I'm financially strapped, so we are getting those questions. Yeah,
Thank you for that additional info as well.
no problem.
Okay.
yeah, there was I think about 3 or 4 questions on this list about that. And there's another parent who says, since children have different ways of learning, how will we know for sure where they are from a 1 to a 3? And I think that's referring to the way of assessment.
Yes, let me see if AD Cox can just sort of give a response and an overview with respect to that. Thank you. AD Cox is an assistant director who oversees the majority, well, a large percentage of our primary schools. She supervises the principals.
So can the parent who had, is the parent who had the question on? I'm sorry, I may have missed it. Pardon?
Is Selena Williams here? Mrs. Williams?
No.
No, I don't think she is actually.
Okay, and her specific question was, how will we know
Yeah.
if?
I think the question really calls for an explanation of the grading.
Of the grading. Okay.
Yeah.
So just as a general overview, and I know parents are at different levels of understanding the grading system. We understand that because we're transitioning and we're still transitioning. And so traditionally we use percentage grades. And then, that model, of course, we grew up with that, and then we knew that a 98 equals, an A and so forth. So with standards-based grading, the name speaks for itself. It is a standard that's set for a child to walk through any objective. And so if the child is around a 3, that would show a level of competence. It says that it's okay, and the 4 being the higher one. But around a 3, it says that, the child has met the standard as described. The teacher can definitely account for what they know at around a 3. And then going down the other way, they know what the child knows what they have to work on, and the teacher knows what they have to work on. So if they're performing at a 1 on any given objective, they are able to move. They know exactly what they have to do because the standards are set. So there's something called feedback and collaboration and talking with a student. You're able to pull out those standards and say, in order for you to become a 2, here are the things that you have to do, or in order for you to reach a 3, here are the things that you'll have to know, and here are the things that you'll have to do, and here's the way to get it. It is, rather than the percentage and sometimes guessing at it, given some information, children going back and learning it and then regurgitating it back, this has a specific set of standards, and those standards fall within the number described. So you will hear your children, if you go to any primary school and you'll hear your children talk about it, they'll say, oh, I got a 2, I'm at a 2, or I was at a 3. They are very competent already to be able to self-assess and to know where they are, because the standards are there every day. The teacher will post them, she'll post them, and the expectations are clear for students, so they know exactly what they need to do to be at any given level. I hope that somewhat explains the standards-based grading piece. I'm not quite sure, that's why I asked for the parent where she wanted to go with the question, or what she wanted to compare it to.
Yeah, I mean, the way the question was worded, it looks like the parent may just need some clarity on how it works, which I think you've given now. The next
And
question.
remember, teachers and the principals are a good resource, particularly when there's a specific case and a specific question around how a child is doing, and the parent may not be quite sure. Your teacher is there, she can explain on any given objective, and also the school principal.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Cox. Another question here is they would like the ministry to seriously consider allowing students to wear black sneakers with their main uniform. Is that a ministerial decision, Mrs. Richards, or is it a department issue?
It is, when we consider uniforms, they are determined at the school level. I did write to, and I shared this with parents who were online with us during the summer, I did write to each of our principals and school leaders to ask them to find ways to simplify the uniform. I did collect data around that and what schools did do. The parent who is having challenges and who wants to take that matter forward, perhaps that individual can privately indicate to you whether he or she did take it forward and whether there was a concern, that it wasn't addressed, or are they just bringing it forward here at this time? Because the question really, or the matter should really start at the school level. Just, I'd like to know, and if the parent is online, if you can just let Mr. Johnson.
No, the parent is not online,
Okay.
unfortunately.
But any matters pertaining to uniform, the first step is the principal, or I would say, if you can't contact the principal right away, then the counselor, but it starts at the school level.
Okay. Any plans to catch up on lost time, such as extending the school year? How are the teachers coping with the new norm? So those are 2 questions in one.
Any decision on extending the school year, first of all, would be made by the Minister of Education. And in order to make any determinations around that, we would definitely have to do an analysis. I know our students did lose a couple of days, hurricane, we had the election, but we would have to definitely do an analysis to determine whether we need to extend the year or not. And if the data indicated that the only person who could do that, determine whether the year would be extended, would be the minister. I do want to say that decision could not be made in isolation. every employee for the Department of Education has an employee contract. That contract, particularly for our school level staff, they are contracted to work for a certain number of days. And so therefore, any decision around extending a school year would have to be made in conjunction with any of the unions as well. And we would have to have sufficient evidence that we would need to do that.
Great. I'm going to ask people, if you're not speaking, please mute your mics.
What was the second part of the question, Mr. Johnson? I got extending.
How are teachers coping with the new norm?
It's challenging for teachers overall. They have had to make adjustments, first of all, to a revised essential curriculum. They've had to make adjustments to the protocols. They've had to make adjustments to the time that they have to be out of the school building. They have to adjust to new routines in the classroom as it relates to children. So there are many adjustments that have been placed on them. They still have the aspect, and that is still balancing it with the expectation that we want students to still achieve. So it's quite a bit of pressure on our students. In fact, I'm sorry, our teachers. In fact, when we were online with them earlier today, one of the questions came up. It was, we have to, when we don't have the same amount of prep time, and also we have to deal with the sanitizing in the classroom. We have to leave the building early, and the comments around that was that it is really demanding. It's demanding under normal circumstances. It's even more demanding, and so there's a commitment to look at what we can do to alleviate some of that pressure and stress for our teachers. And in spite of that, I really do want to commend them because, we have the survey results, but we also, stories bubble up to us, and we have parents who don't hesitate to let us know they appreciate what teachers and, staff are doing for their children. They appreciate them going the extra mile for their children. So in spite of all of those demands, our teachers continue to rise and to deal with those challenges and work to do the best they can for young people. So I applaud them.
Great. And someone is speaking. I guess this is an opportunity to talk. It's an opinion here. We need to talk about going back to an education system where a high percentage of citizens graduated and were able to take up trades that were offered in the high school system. Are they considering going back to the old system? Maybe we can just talk about in general terms, Mrs. Richards, about what is going on in terms of the restructuring or school redesign projects.
So let me say this. No, we are not going back to the old system. The old system would have been geared to our students and our community and our workforce at that time. What we are going to do with the input of teachers, parents, and community is to look forward to what our children need to do to redesign schools. But the individuals who's asked the question, I think there's probably, the individual wants to know, will we be doing courses and subjects, and will children acquire technical skills? And the answer to that is yes, but within the context of current research, within the context of what students want and need and how they best learn, within the context of what the future workforce will look like. So no, we will not go back to what we had, but some of what the focus on the technical, what you would call the technical skills, will come forth when we consider the types of skills that students will need for the 21st and 22nd century workforce.
And somebody wants to know quarantine requirements when a family member travels.
When a family member travels, if it's an adult, when the adult returns and quarantines, the student would quarantine with the parent. So the student still mirrors the parent, and the student would be out for the duration that the parent is out. And that's anywhere from 8 to 14 days. If the parent tests positive, the student would be out even longer.
Okay. Update on remote learning. When will lessons start being given?
I'm not sure what that question,
She just wants an update on the remote learning for, I don't know if she's here. Is Miss Head here? Christina Head?
the remote learning is for, at this point, children who are extremely clinically vulnerable.
And that's probably what she's referencing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what she's referencing.
So the remote learning for children who are extremely clinically vulnerable should have started. If it hasn't started, then there should be contact made with the principal. I think actually,
I could take that one
I think
offline with you.
I think
I could take that one
yeah.
offline with you.
Yes, yes, I can address that offline. Yes, I think I'm aware. Yes, I recall.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a specific situation.
yeah,
So,
we can take that one offline.
Okay.
and I think there has been correspondence around that.
Yeah,
Just for general information for those parents who are online, students who are extremely clinically vulnerable, who have submitted medical certificates which have been vetted by the Department of Health. Once they have given the okay, then that student qualifies for remote learning. And the department is then responsible for working with the school. Our IT section is responsible for working with the school to get the student and the setup at home and the classroom set up so that the teacher can navigate that with the student.
All right, there's another question about COVID-19 vaccination for the children, etc. That's all she wrote.
We'll have to have Department of Health answer that question because that's a very technical question.
Yeah, we'll follow up with health, and we'll get back to everybody on any health questions that we cannot answer tonight.
I think it was today in the newspaper, or it was either on Burn News, one of them. There was a report around the UK ordering vaccines, and that there was going to be sufficient for the overseas territories, but there wasn't a date or anything around when the vaccine would be available. But in terms of, and I guess, is the parent online? Because these questions, it's very difficult to answer. We don't know whether we're answering them. The question, is it a question about should the child get a vaccine, or is the vaccine gonna be for children? Or, we would like to know what the parent is really seeking so that we can ensure we're answering your questions.
It's Selwyn Scott. I don't see her name here. No, she's not around.
Okay.
I guess one of the questions with regards to the vaccine for myself would be, is it going to be compulsory for children to take it, or will that exclude them from being able to attend school if the parent chooses not to go that route?
Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
We haven't there's not been any policy communication like that so far, has there, Mrs. Richards?
Not that I'm aware of, but we can ask around, and I can also ask, is there going to be a policy around that? But I think the statement or, or the query from the parent who just shared is going to be quite helpful. And I think it's good, I'm looking forward to getting a response from the Department of Health. And by the way, we will post the responses on the primary level Facebook page for you so that you do have those responses.
Yeah. Are there any required vaccinations for children in public school, Mrs. Richards?
Now, Mr. Johnson, I wish that I could answer that.
Okay, sorry. I mean,
Unfortunately, but I can Mr. Johnson, my children did go through the whole public, they would have had whatever they needed to have, but they're 28 and 32 now, so they're quite out of the way, but I can certainly ask. And I don't know if there are other parents online who know about that, but I can ask the Department of Health. And you said,
okay.
are there any required, right?
Yes.
Mhm. Thank you. Got that?
I mean, I guess people are concerned about the current situation, but one would think that if there were any, then... All right, sorry, we'll move on. Outdoor learning, somebody has written here. Miss Aziza Furbert, who I don't believe has arrived yet. But I think she's referring to, the public health benefits in a situation like this, where they were encouraging schools to actually have classes outside. Is there any update on that? Are schools being encouraged to do that? It's a bit cold now, though, I think.
AD, can you speak to that? I know we encouraged them at the beginning of the year, but AD Cox may be able to give
And
experience.
outdoors, curriculum-wise, lends itself to amazing learning. And so that's always encouraged. Our teachers are, they're very flexible and they do that anyway. As for a standard that you must teach outside, no, but certainly all of our subjects lend itself at times to outside learning, and that does occur quite regularly.
When can schools resume hot lunch, pizza, or hot dog days?
I don't, at this time, I can't even give a date. The Department of Health, of course, are constantly scanning what is going on in Bermuda. We know there's been a shift in our status, which means that we will have to continue to adhere to very strictly the protocols and safety measures in schools. So until the Department of Health changes a protocol to say that hot lunches, et cetera, can occur, then we will have to continue with what we have in place.
It's also a good opportunity for parents to think about the island status, and I know that's on a lot of people's minds, but also to imagine what it would be like in a school of 100 children and 30 staff members to be able to manage health protocols. Our schools do an amazing job of it, but when we start adding things like hot dog lunch or pizza lunch, you then start getting into lots of opportunities to handle equipment and food, and we're much safer. It's much better to be able to protect the environments with a lot less commotion and movement and the touching of things. And so as we learn about COVID-19 and how it's transmitted, schools are, they could be a great breeding ground for germs. And we know what happens when children go to school in the winter and with the sniffles on a regular, in any regular time. But now that we are in this kind of position, the management of the protocols have to be followed. So anything that could put schools at risk, as safety risk or health risk, then in the protocols, we have to be very careful about that. It's best if children bring their own lunch. It is theirs, it's in their bags. And when the Department of Health, or if the Department of Health has to come in and do an assessment of, due to any kind of contact tracing, then it's much easier to manage rather than, oh, you know what, there was a lunch lady and this person was managing the hot dogs, and then those hot dogs and those containers went to this classroom. It would definitely be a lot to manage. It's much safer if children bring their lunches in their containers, in their own bags, and they're the only ones who handle those while they're at school.
Thank you very much for that, Mrs. Cox. This question I don't quite understand. I think it's two questions. She says, two-tier school system and allowing special needs children the option of going to after-school care if they are high-functioning kids and can follow basic commands. So I think we've talked a bit about a two-tier school system. But can we address the special needs children and after-school care option?
Right, I think that the parent, there obviously has been an issue with a special needs student being accepted into an after-school care program. The question was if there is a special needs student who is high functioning, and I'm taking that to mean the student does not require the support of a paraeducator or an educational therapist, etc., whether that student could be a part of an after-school program. The parent
currently, I'm sorry, Ms. Richards.
yes.
Currently, the after schools run by the Department of Youth
and Sport, yes.
And so, okay. And so they're the ones who determine when children can join their program. And I know that of recent, in the last 2 years, they have been not including children with special needs because children require extra support that they don't have in the after school program. So I was just gonna say, Ms. Richards, that was something you probably communicate with the Department of Youth and Sport, because the Department of Education doesn't hold the after school programs. Yeah.
So the parent is mentioning it in reference to a two-tier system. I think when we shift from our current structure and is asking whether is the parent online to explain? I'm interpreting it as well that when we shift to this new vision that we have, will there be an after-school program for high-functioning children?
I don't believe she's here. Susan Paul? No.
So part of the vision moving forward is to expand the services and what we offer for children who are special needs, and to have, we're looking to have a purpose-built facility, which is certainly long overdue. And with that will come opportunities as part of the vision for before morning care, after school care, but all of those things have to be sorted out. We don't know whether that would be available, at the beginning of a redesigned system, whether it would be phased in eventually. Those discussions still have to be held.
Great. So those are the questions that were submitted on the registration form. We do have a couple of questions coming in on the chat function. Somebody
Great.
wants to know the Dreambox renewal status. Please advise on Dreambox renewal status. I don't understand what that question means, sorry.
Dreambox is an online program for supporting mathematics that we use primary and middle, with our primary and middle level students. The question is leading me to, the parent is saying that Dreambox is not available.
I
would check with IT. And
yes, Mrs. Richards.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Ms. Souza?
Yes. For Dreambox is currently unavailable at Purvis. They were saying it needed to be renewed by the ministry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
How long has that been the case?
We'll post an update, a response on the Facebook page.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions they would like answered right now? Any complaints, concerns?
And feel free to share any concerns that you have so that we can, work to address them.
Any anxieties? Oh, somebody else is coming. Okay, it's probably a good time to share some of the results of the survey.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, I think there's a question that came in the chat.
Oh, can we keep the staggered starts? Some schools, all schools doing staggered?
Some schools actually have morning staggered starts. I'm not too sure if many of them still have it. I knew it was a few of them that were doing it to deal with morning protocols.
Yes, so some will have, so from 8:30 to 9, we deemed it entry protocol time for every school. And some principals, due to their school campus, the number of children that they have, the way the traffic flows, may have said the P1s and 2s come at 8:30 and P3s and 4s come at 8:45, anywhere in between that 8:30 to 9 period. But right now, the timetable is set that way, and individual schools, as long as it's between 8:30 and 9, that somewhere along that half hour, 30-minute time frame is when children must be in school. But then that's individual, depending on, what school they go to. I do know that in observing the entry protocols, of course, that doesn't work for everyone. Some people have siblings in different year levels. And so the schools have made arrangements with those parents to say, oh, you come with the older child or you come with the younger child. Whatever that is, they are accommodating, but it's anytime from 8:30 until 9 that parents are able to drop their children off, unless the principal of the school has decided that in order to manage it well, that they're going to have different times within the 30 minutes.
And can we just explore that question a little further? So is the staggered start not offered as an option for your school and you want to see that? Was it initially there and it's no longer there? Are you asking whether the staggered will continue for the duration of the year? Can we just dig a little deeper?
Ms. Tosha?
Hi, no, I was just saying I actually quite like the staggered starts. I'm hoping that they continue.
For the duration of this year?
this year into infinium.
Well,
Because it just makes
Forever
traffic
and
so much
ever.
better.
so one of the challenges is, well, it will continue for this year, but one of the challenges is what that does, it's taken away 30 minutes of instructional time every day. And so we've done that because of the children have to come, they have to sanitize, the temperatures are taken. And so we had to accommodate that. But once we get beyond this pandemic, and I can't wait for that, then those 30 minutes will go back to instructional time. So I have to just put that up front.
All right, another question just came in. Do we have a timetable for when the laptops will be available to the public school students?
Yes, the last update which I received was last week, and the minister also shared the update in one of his most recent statements. We were due to have 1,600 Chromebooks arrive on the island in October, early to mid-October. The updates from Bermuda Microsystems has indicated that we're looking at potentially the end of December. So we're hoping that doesn't change. We are in a line, and I did see the actual documentation. We are in line with districts who have ordered 500,000, devices. We ordered 1,600. So we're in a lineup, and we're waiting, we can't wait to get our order so that we can begin to process and distribute to our children. So end of December at this point.
Another question's coming. Do we have any idea when non-government service providers will be allowed into the school building? Service providers like the reading clinic.
The Department of Health provides education with guidance. And again, they're current, they scan what's going on in the island. When they change the protocol, that's when they would be allowed in. But until they change the protocol, then we would have to hold off from having various community partners coming in.
Okay. There's no more questions. Any more questions from anybody? Any thoughts? Okay, can I share the results of the survey now, Mr. Richards?
Absolutely, yes. And if we can ask everyone to mute, because I do hear some background noise, but definitely Mr. Johnson. And we'll confirm it will, we won't be showing any names or any schools or anything like that, just the results.
Yeah, we have results. We ran a survey for about a week, as all of you should know, and I'm just going to share the general overview of all the results. Where is it? I think some of the questions, almost half of the respondents were actually from the primary level. So we sent the survey to all the families that were on the mailing list, and or rather all the contacts that we have on the list, and 430 odd people responded, of which 190 were from primary schools. So I'm showing you the primary school results right now. The majority, 75% of those respondents, feel that the COVID-19 mitigation measures in the schools are just right. About 17% think they're too restrictive, and another 7 or 8% think they're not restrictive enough. And when we ask whether it's in their child's best interest that your child continues to attend school in person, we have about 80% either agree or strongly agree with that statement.
I think that was 54%, Mr. Johnson. Can you go back up?
Well, 27 and 54
Oh, right. Agree, strongly disagree. Yes.
agree and strongly
Strongly
agree.
agree. Yes, thank you.
So my mathematics telling us about 81.
Yes, I was just focusing on the green bar. Sorry.
Yeah. It's interesting. No, very few people, 3 people out of 190 strongly disagreed with that, and only 1 person disagreed. So that's good news for everybody, I think. It is in my own best interest that children continue to attend school in person. We have about 76% agree or strongly agree. Very few people disagree or strongly disagree. And again, some good news, more than 90% agree or strongly agree that their child has adjusted well to the safety and health protocols at school. And we have roughly the same amount, 88%, 89% think the child's school is doing a good job with the safety and health protocols at the school. And on child's learning is progressing well. That's 60%, sorry, who's it, 67, 78%, sorry, agree that it's, or strongly agree that their child's learning is progressing well. Quality of teaching is at a good standard according to roughly 80% of respondents agree or strongly agree. That's 55% agree plus 26% strongly agree. A handful of people, 4.5% disagree, and 1% strongly disagree. The confidence level about the children's physical safety and health at school, we have roughly 78% are strongly confident or confident about their child's physical safety and health. 2.5% are not at all confident. And some people are unsure about it. 20% are unsure. So I think it's sort of an interesting response. Maybe we can discuss that here. Would anybody here fall into that group? Not sure about their child's safety and health?
I
Well, we
would
can
say,
talk about it.
yeah,
Sorry?
I would say that I'm unsure, just based on the whole premise that the school has its social bubbles, but when children are leaving school, there are multiple social bubbles that they are now interacting in, and we have no control over that. For instance, I go across a football club every night, and there are kids from all different areas at that football club. You know, so even though we talk about social bubbles at school, and then I'm just being with the people in their class, when our children leave school, their social bubbles expand exponentially. So
Yeah.
that person then comes back to the school. We have no control who they've been with outside of school. So that's where my uncertainty will probably lie.
Yeah. Is there any comment from Ms. Richards there on that one?
Yes, I was shaking my head because and nodding. The scenario that was shared continues to come up, and it came up with the earlier group with our teachers and educators. It came up earlier this week, and so I'm thinking that we really have to get health to provide us with a response and an answer so that we can really understand what the science is as it relates to all of that. But what I would underscore with us at schools, and I shared this this afternoon, we have a legal responsibility to ensure the safety and health of children. So we have to follow those, adhere to those protocols to the best of our ability. This afternoon with teachers, we talked about, making sure you have your mask on, that you are ensuring the sanitizing, disinfecting is taking place. Children need to wash their hands. We need to be as diligent as possible so that when they come in, we mitigate or we reduce the chances of any transmission in our environment, with the student who's coming in. But I really do think it's time for us to to get health to kind of break that down for us, because we're not in a position to answer that. We need to have a response that we can just have available and maybe even post on the Facebook page. So I'm glad you raised that, because it's just it's common. It was raised by a principal, Mrs. Richards, we're doing this, but when they go out, they're mixing. It was raised, so, and you're raising it. We need to address it, I think, formally and at depth. So thank you for bringing it up.
But surely parents need to also stress upon their children that they need to not be mixing too much with other kids when they're outside.
If I could also jump in on that one, I was one of the parents that raised a concern about my child's emotional health, that sort of thing. Based on the bubbles and having the children kept within their bubbles, I've personally dealt with a couple of issues this year where there has been issues within the bubbles with regards to aggressive behavior from one student to another, older students breaking the bubbles, and children not really feeling safe at recess and different times because they're unable to break those bubbles, or they feel the pressure not to break those bubbles to get the help or to avoid those sort of situations. So that has been a struggle that I've personally had. I've discussed it with the school, but there's a lot of confusion as to how to address those situations, because obviously all children deserve a recess. They need that time, especially right now when their emotional health, their psychological health may be stressed because of all the extra precautions we're taking. So that is one thing that I've personally come across. That the bubbles in themselves do feel restrictive in situations where children may need more support or need to feel a little bit more protected.
And you said you had it addressed, were there any interventions put in place?
I mean, there was when you say intervention, the only intervention that really was put in place was recess and lunch was taken away. But other than that, there seems to be almost a loss of what to do.
So the response was to not provide can you explain that a little bit for me? When you say
to take the recess away from, I don't like to use the word aggressor because I don't believe that children are aggressive, but I believe that it's obviously them expressing their emotions because they're unable to do so verbally. Right. Yeah, I guess that was my concern, because they are so stuck within their bubbles in their classrooms, and then the same group of children are then together at lunchtime recess with very little ability to move and disperse. So sometimes the tensions just reach breaking point, I believe.
And when the student was back with the bubble during recess and lunch, did the behavior change?
It hasn't been as frequent as it was, but there are still times when the behavior does continue.
And you're monitoring, and are you in contact with the respective, if not the teacher, the deputy, the counselor can be involved there as well?
Yeah,
So
we've done all of that.
okay, but ideally there should be a plan in place to intervene with specific strategies and to be checking to see, how your child is managing. So do
Okay.
ask for an intervention plan for that situation.
Okay, that's good to know. I will do that.
And she can escalate that if necessary to the assistant director.
Yes. But we try to have things resolved at the school level first, as much as possible. If it's not resolved at that level, then it comes up to the department level, to the assistant director. But, as a parent, you can reach out directly to the counselor and ask for an intervention plan.
Okay, thank you. I will do that.
Certainly.
Okay, so that brings us to this data point. Concern about children's psychological and emotional health. There are roughly 8 to 9% of the respondents who are extremely concerned, and another 8% is quite concerned.
So, Mr. Johnson, and I don't
Yes.
know if AD Bucci would also like to piggyback on the comments I'm going to make, though, but any parent who checked the box for extremely concerned,
Yeah.
well, from somewhat, well, I would say extremely concerned and quite concerned, I'm hoping that the parent has made contact with the school counselor, because that would be an imperative.
And some of the comments, could we give everybody a chance to elaborate? A few people have talked about bullying. Not that many, but there's some I found it quite worrying personally when I read that.
Yes.
So, what can we say about, I mean, we've had a bit of that conversation, but is there anything generally that would support parents or children who are in that position? What should they be telling their children to do?
Well, the first step is to bring it to the attention of the counselor at the primary level, because you don't have year heads like you have at the middle and senior. And then, there has to be a Zoom meeting or a telephone conference around that to indicate what the concerns are, the impact on the child, and then the counselor, because the counselor is the technical person and who brings the expertise around how to navigate the bullying and all of that, will then work with the parent and child, as well as the other parent and child, to step out a plan for how we can address it. The goal is to always put something in place, monitor it, because we want to, to eradicate that. We want the bullying to stop, but it's not going to stop unless there is an intentional plan that is put in place, that is monitored, where there's check-ins. A once-off will not, a once-off, meeting or a once-off, strategy is not going to get rid of the bullying. It has to be something that's sustained. And then even when it stops, you have to still monitor it to ensure that, the person has changed behavior. So it requires the work and support of a counselor. And that is, what our counselors are trained to do.
Okay.
We want every child who goes into a school building to feel comfortable going into a school building, to feel safe. And they should not have to be anxious about or worrying about somebody who's going to bully them.
Yeah. So we had people rank issues in order of concern. and 25% had mask wearing as a number one concern. But most, well, 45% of the respondents were concerned about how their children will catch up on their learning as a number one concern. Those were big ones. And I think that's it, really. That's a sort of overview of everything. We will be analyzing this. We'll be reporting back to parents on these survey results with hopefully some sort of conversation around how what the response will be from the commissioner and the departments on some of the concerns that have been raised.
Mr. Johnson, I'd like to share two matters that have bubbled up to my attention with parents and ask if they can take these back to the PTA to have some discussion. One is around the wearing of or mask. We found that schools were sending in orders just, very often asking for the disposable mask, saying that children are not coming to school with masks. And if you can discuss it at your PTA level with parents when you have a large group, we are relying on parents to provide the mask for children. A child should also have in his or her backpack an extra mask in the event of an emergency. And the school has emergency masks should we need it for the isolation room, should something happen where a child has gone through his or her emergency mask, then we'll go through that. But the school is not going to be in a position with us providing disposable masks for children every day. We would not be able to sustain that for over close to 4,000 children. We won't be able to do that.
And there's also that concern about travel. We've heard anecdotally, and it's in this survey as well, that some parents are traveling, but not allowing their parents, sending their children to school when they arrive.
So we want to underscore that if a parent travels or someone in the household travels and returns home and has to quarantine, the child has to quarantine. So the child, the student cannot go to school. So we wanted to underscore that. But my other one was I have received some feedback that now where we have parents assessing, sort of answering those 4 questions at home, and students just have to come for the temperature taking, that we have some children who are being dropped off outside of schools after 7. It's a concern when we have children left outside of school at that time. They are at risk for, persons who are driving by, and, I'm very concerned about that. And I just want to ask parents to work with their family, with godparents, friends, etc., to put a strategy in place so that we're not putting children at risk where somebody can take advantage of them because they're outside of a school on their own waiting for an adult to arrive. And teachers are arriving close to 8:30, which means students can be there for over an hour and 15 minutes waiting for adults to arrive on their own. So that's of concern to me as well. We want to protect children and keep them safe.
Okay, does anybody else have any question? Okay, somebody wants to know, can we share information on the type of laptop that will be provided to the students, as somebody may want to make a purchase for themselves?
Yes, we're purchasing Chromebooks, and what we can do is post the models in the Facebook, Mr. Johnson, so I'll make a note of that.
Okay. And there's a note here to me saying, I know of parents who have their child every other week. What happens if the parent travels and the child is with the other parents?
So we can
But
act,
they
that's
asked
a
for
good
14
scenario
days.
for the Department of Health.
Mm.
So,
Yes, I think that's the
yes,
Commissioner, it sounds the same as if someone has, if you're able to
oh, right,
quarantine without, right? And so that would be fine because if the parent travels and the other parent has the child and remains with the child, then that child will probably not even have to quarantine because they've never had contact with the parent who was abroad.
they would have to remain, so instead of
They
doing
would have to
3 weeks,
remain.
they would have to stay for the 2-week, the 14-day period.
Right.
The
And
other,
that has actually come up already in this with a few of the skills who have already been impacted.
yes,
I've had a few calls from Bermudians and social media and the like. That situation did arise, and I got a call to say child A shouldn't be in school because of such and such. And us being human, they went back to the school. So that scenario came up. So parents are watching to see whether or not that parent actually, if they know that your family went away, they
yes,
are reporting it back to the schools. So it does raise a matter of concern.
right. And I see that as us working together.
Together,
Children
absolutely,
safe. And
absolutely.
I'm glad parents are doing that. I don't want us to see it in a negative way. We have to think about why would someone be concerned about that and why would
Yeah.
they report
Yeah.
it? Because they're concerned
Concern,
about the
right.
safety of their child and everybody else in the building. But what we really want parents to do is to think about the fact that, if they do travel and they send their child,
To
that
school.
they put their child, but they put every other child
else
in that
agrees.
class. They stop the learning, on-site learning for children in that class. They impact the lives of the specialist teachers. And so we just
It's a
want
domino effect.
everybody to adhere to the policy. Keep your child home if you've traveled. And if if your child cannot stay with someone else and the child is with you, your child is with you, then you have to quarantine together.
Yep, that's fine.
Let's protect each other. I think
Okay.
that's so important.
Key.
Great. So there's we still have another 20 minutes. Is there anybody want to any thoughts, any reactions to what's been said so far?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Has any consideration been given to doing the survey again? Because I know when I was on the last night's one, it was, I think, 28 out of 100 and something, or 300 and something students. And now you're saying it's like 199 respondents. And I know Northlands itself has 167 students. So if I multiply that by the number of schools, the response rate I don't think is that great. And is there any way that the survey can be put out there and people who are on the PTAs and stuff kind of ask the parents, listen, we're trying to gather this information to assist the ministry as much as possible. Please, 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 can we get some response to the surveys?
My thoughts personally, I mean, I did think about maybe we should extend the period, etc. I think my statistics isn't that good anymore, but when it comes to the overall response, it is quite statistically significant because most surveys we have about, I think it was about 3,600 households involved roughly. So if we got more than 10% of that, that's a reasonable return. But I do worry about the response from like the preschools, for example, that is very, very, very low. The primary school is it's probably around as good as it could be. But the more the merrier, obviously, So I think it's up to the commissioner, really. We could probably extend it open it up again and extend it for a week and really push it, like you're saying, because it will give us much more richer information. My only concern is that we have to have the capacity to analyze it properly. And this
Right.
is a sort of survey where we're asking now for actual individual responses. So if you took the survey, you would see there were many, many boxes where you could actually elaborate on your actual response. So it's not just a numbers game. It has to be, we've got to analyze the content as well.
Yes.
So from my perspective, I'm happy with the numbers from
Right. I don't think that we're
from a
good.
workload point of view. But I take your point. We could do with more preschool respondents and probably more middle school and senior school as well.
Right. I guess I would be for, I mean, we can give that some thought. I'm not leaning to doing it. I would be more interested in hearing from our parents in terms of why they think some parents might not have done the survey to help us the
Yeah.
next time round, because we're going to be doing surveys throughout. Do you have any, can you hypothesize why parents maybe didn't do the survey? Any thoughts on that?
I don't. Mr. Lightburn, what do you think?
I think sometimes it's just, as I discussed last night, you get the emails, but you're inundated with so many other emails that
Yeah.
it's just, how do we communicate that this is what is out there in a different way from all the other information that we're getting?
It's tricky. There's a lot of noise out there. There's all sorts of things going on that parents and all of us are bombarded with on a day-to-day basis,
Right.
So it's, I think we're lucky getting 400 and something responses, to be honest,
I
and
think from my perspective, Mr. Johnson, my question would be, do we have enough information to give us some insights into how parents are thinking? We know that as it relates to the children's social emotional well-being, yes, we don't have the thousands of responses, but we know that there are parents who are extremely concerned.
yes,
We know that we have some who did the survey who are extremely concerned, which means that there are those who didn't do the survey there will be
who
some.
would, yeah,
So we know that there are people who fall in that category. So we know we still have to act on that, whether it's just a few or it's even more. And then parents have been gracious enough to elaborate on comments.
yeah,
That's told us a bit more. So we have data to let us know some things that are going well, but some things that are not. And then we have a responsibility to share it with schools so that they know. And I think in some of
yeah,
the categories, there were people, parents who fell in those categories where they strongly disagreed or they were not confident about something, or they had strong concerns. So we do have enough data to move on it.
yeah. I think it's a valuable survey, and it is something. It's a type of instrument that I would like to see the education system do on a very regular basis. After these series of meetings, we actually started another series of surveys on communication.
Yes.
Okay, so and that's a very big exercise where we're going to establish, hopefully, find answers to the question. So, what is your preferred means of communication?
Yes.
What is more effective for everybody? So now we can allocate those resources in the best way possible. Because right now, we're sending the newsletter out, and 50% of people are opening those newsletters, which is a lot better than in schools in America, for example. In school systems in America, you'd be lucky to get 25% of the parents open a newsletter. So but surveys like this are valuable in that we can also, when we see something alarming, we can have a meeting like this and have a qualitative discussion about it. So it's
And
not just
that's,
numbers, it's not just sort of like headline and numbers. It's really what is really going on the ground, you know.
thank you, Mr. Johnson, because that's where I was going to go as well. I was wondering if when we have the data and we have certain themes coming out, those parents who have concerns around those areas, do we just hold Zoom meetings, right, around those topical issues? And I'd like to hear what our parents think about that.
Yeah, I just got a message saying, being devil's advocate here, timing of the survey, lack of internet availability. Some parents are fed up, and because of that, they feel they aren't heard or won't be heard. Some feel it would be a waste of time as they have more important things to do.
So those are noted, and we're hoping that we get to a point in the system where we do the surveys, we report out. So we've done some preliminary reporting with you on the data, and then there'll be official reporting and sharing, and then we'll pull the themes, and then we can do some meetings around those. And I think that parents will see that, you know, we're taking it seriously. We're not just doing a survey for the sake of it. Requires a lot of planning, time to develop it, time to analyze it, and then of course to act on what we've learned from it. It's going to help us to get better as a system, but it's going to help us to do a better job for your children. That's what it's about. That's at the heart of it.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to accept that parents will feel they're not heard if we're asking them their views. You know what I mean? You know, and reporting back. So I mean, obviously, but I guess it's feedback. You know, I mean, it's a stressful time now
We
where everybody's
appreciate it.
going through.
Yes, yes.
So, any other thoughts from anybody else? We've got 12 minutes. To show of hands of people, did everybody here fill in this survey? There's an emoji reaction
I
thing.
see that.
Okay. Thumbs up if you filled in the
Alrighty.
survey, please.
I'm not putting anybody on the spot, Mr. Johnson.
I am.
Because a parent, I mean, there are some parents who will say, well, everything's fine from my perspective. I don't, you know, it's a check-in. We want to see how you're doing. So I don't need to do this. So people will have their reasons. But again, we want to thank those who did, because they've given us what we call valuable, rich data that we will use to improve what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think most people here did. So
Yeah.
a few
Good stuff.
didn't.
Well, Mr. Johnson, we
I
don't
do
have to
take your
force
point.
it. I think if everyone has shared their questions, then we can end a little earlier than we had anticipated.
Yeah. Last call. Anybody more? Any questions? Any concerns? Any comments? Bell's ringing. Okay. Well, thank you
All
so
righty.
much for showing
Thank you
up.
for joining us. Happy Thanksgiving for tomorrow, and do take care. We wish you well, wish your families well, and of course your precious children, we wish them well. Take care.
Thank you.
All
Good
righty.
night.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to our
Bye.
Department of Education officers.